Hi, I'm George Michail, creator of Resilience, and you're watching Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by a fellow Canadian, a very talented writer. I've looked at some of his work on his website. He has just shown me Resilient, which is his new comic that'll have a Kickstarter coming up. I'll let him describe all of that in itself. I love the art, love the writing, love his style overall. We are joined today by George Michail. How are you doing today, George?
I'm great, Kurt. Thanks for having me on the show.
Not a problem. Looking at your website, you've done at least 4 comics that I've seen. You might have more in the future, but from what I've seen, you have a very diverse style when it comes to your genres, from sci-fi to fantasy to real world, in the sense that you have some great concepts from what I've seen. Tell us about Resilient and tell us about your other works.
I've been making comic books for about 3.5 years now, and Resilience is my first series released by a publisher. That's out from Absolute Comics Group right now, and it's in stores June 30th, but you can order it through Previews Magazine. Um, it's an action adventure comic, a story about a woman and how tough and strong she is, and we've really put her through paces in this story. She's a judo teacher, and she actually loses her arm in a demining expedition in Cambodia, and she's there with her husband, trying to kind of atone for kind of the sins of his past, and that kind of remains a mystery now exactly what he's done. But he has a lot of guilt, and so they go there trying to remove landmines, trying to make people's lives better, and she loses her arms, and it's about her story kind of adapting and kind of uh, staying strong through this like terrible injury that she's suffered, and then she gets these cybernetic pink mecha robot arm, and her husband's past catches up to him, and and she's got to go get her man, and there's there's blood and guts and carnage as the series progresses for sure.
Well, you kind of left it off as a teaser when I got to read this first issue, and I'm like, darn you! I mean, darn you! It was just getting interesting. You know, like I wanted to see what was happening next, but you cut it off at a good point. So that's talk about this particular concept because it seems like the classic revenge storylines trope that you see in some cases, very Tarantino esque, I must say. But why was this an important story to tell out of your mind?
Sure. This is a personal story for me. I broke my back in 2014. I had heart surgery when I was 15 years old. So I wanted to kind of explore those concepts of someone being injured, being knocked down, and then getting back up again. At the same time, though, I wanted to kind of not tell like a boring drama of that's just not my jam. I like kung fu movies, and I like Tarantino. That's a huge compliment. Thank you. And I love those that type of genre of action and thriller, and so that's the story I wanted to tell. But I really wanted the characters to be relatable for the reader to care about them. So that's why we really put them through the paces, and you see what they're made of, and you see, and it's about a husband and wife. The female character, her name's Jolanda. She's named after my wife, and she is the lead, but the story really talks about their relationship, and really kind of showing up for somebody and being there for your partner when they need them most, right? And so we start off with the couple struggling with infertility problems, and then later in the story we see them dealing with this huge injury that she's had. So yeah, that I don't like it when the carnage hits and they haven't and the story hasn't done the groundwork to establish the characters. It kind of feels like a video game at that point, and there's no emotional connection. So that's why we really tried to build this into the story.
I mean, you must have gotten bonus points from your wife for naming the main character after her, so good for you.
Yeah, I don't know. She kind of threw it out there as a joke, like, oh, like 'cause I was writing a few different books, and she's like, oh, you've got, and I was naming different characters after people that we knew and stuff like that. And she's like, oh, you never threw my name in there, and then so it's like, she just kind of offhandedly said it, and so then I made her the main character in this story, and yeah, and it's the first one to be picked up by a publisher, and I think it's going to be kind of my biggest title. For me, I've been working in comics for a few years now, and I worked in telling like a horror story, or telling like my first story was like a real homage to like 80s 90s action movies, right, full with like cheesy one-liners and just fun like that too. And then I have one that's kind of more for children, that's kind of like X-Men, the animated series, Batman, like just
Nice.
a tribute to those sort of 90s animated shows that I loved. As a new creator in comics, you kind of start to question yourself, having like a sense of imposter syndrome, and it's like, what am I offering to this? And my first few stories were really set in very clear genres, whereas this one is a lot more personal, and I put a lot more of my own kind of emotions and history into the book. So that's a difference between this one and the other titles.
Why do you feel that you get imposter syndrome from creating something you love?
Well, I think, every time a creator sits down, they kind of can question, what they're putting into their work, and it's tempting to write about the things that you love, but you want to bring some originality to it, right? So this one I feel like does have some originality to it, right? Because it talks about topics that you don't often see, especially in comic books. It's so often our heroes are single, you know, white superheroes for the most part, majority. And this is a story about a husband and wife and their relationship. When you're writing, in genre, it's tempting to pay tribute to something, and I really tried to resist that a bit in this one, and just kind of tell my own story.
In talking with other creators, everyone has that imposter syndrome. It's no matter if they're actors or comic artists, writers, etc. Everyone feels like they're not good enough to do what they're doing, yet they're professionals at it, like yourself. You're a professional writer. You're a creator of some great stories. You're putting yourself out there with this particular comic book, and it shows. So you just got to keep doing what you're doing, and obviously being picked up by a publisher is a great first step more than anything, and continuing to write multiple books. I guess I'm assuming you're writing more than one book for this Resilience series.
Yeah, it's an ongoing right now. Uh, I self-funded the first issue, and I took it to New York Comic Con, and I talked with Absolute Comics, who I knew because I have a monster book, and I was on the road in 2019, selling that at different conventions. It's called Cover of Darkness, and that's what this art is from. This is from Scott McDaniel with Batman, Nightwing.
Mm-hmm.
He's the series cover artist on that book,
That looks
and
awesome.
yeah, he's incredible. And so I was on the road with Cover of Darkness in 2019, and I tabled next to Jamie Tyndall and Murphy. Jamie Tyndall's an artist on White Widow, which is their biggest seller there at Absolute Comics, and Murphy's his sales rep, and now co-writer on some of his other properties. And so I hung out with them multiple times. Like, just I did 18 shows. I think I was next to them like 4 or 5 times. So I just kind of kept on running into them and hanging out. And then you end up going for dinner after the show. And, start talking. And then I met the editor in chief, Benny Powell, in New York, and he really liked the series a lot. And he was very passionate about it, actually, which was a huge compliment for me. This is their first time launching Kickstarter without their White Widow title attached to it. Every other time I think they've done 6 Kickstarters now with the White Widow book, for 6 issues. And so this is the first time they're launching a Kickstarter. I think we come out on Monday here with that,
Nice.
Monday, May 3rd. And yeah, so it's in stores through Previews Magazine, and it'll be in stores on June 30th. You can order it now, or you can go on to Kickstarter, and the first week of May, and we have exclusive covers that are only available through the Kickstarter, and I'm super psyched about some of them. I got Ed Benes
Ooh,
from like Justice League and Birds of Prey.
awesome.
He just slayed it. It's like so good, and that one's only on the Kickstarter, and you can get it in a metal print, which like metal comic books. I've never had a metal comic book before, so I'm pretty stoked about that.
That's awesome.
We've got all sorts of cool ones. There's one by Andy Bellinger, who worked on like Swamp Thing and Southern Cross, and it's a lenticular cover, and you can turn it and like her arms appear and like, disappear. Yeah, Ali Garza from Supergirl and Teen Titans, Deadpool. Yeah, and then of course we have our series artist Vince Altabanis, and so Vince is an artist that's not known very well in comic books yet, but he's an incredible artist that I found on Instagram. He mostly worked in video games, and he's done like some covers for like Zenoscope and things like this in the
Yep.
past. But he's incredible. I felt really lucky to land an artist of his caliber, and we've been working on this book for a few years now because we self-funded the first issue and then we took a break, and then when we got picked up by Absolute end of 2019, and then 2020 happened, so we kind of had a delay on putting the book out there, but we've been continuing to make issues.
Let's dive into your background as a writer itself, because I always find writers interesting because they're the unsung heroes of comic books when it comes to, you can always find an amazing artist, but you can sometimes never find the right writer to fit the art style. For you as a writer though, and creator of the series, I should say, as well as a side note, how did you get started with writing, and how have you continued to improve yourself?
Well, I've always wanted to work in comic books. As like a little kid, I had the Marvel trading cards, and they came out at like the 7-Eleven. I'd go down there and get them, and we'd play all sorts of like crazy hockey games where I don't know if you remember like the hockey cards where you like throw them and like knock them off the ledge and things like that and collect them and
Yeah.
stuff. And go to my local shop, and Silver Surfer was the first one that I kind of really loved on my own that I found in the stores, and then all the great animated shows came out, X-Men and Batman, and I was just like drawn right in. I had a copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way,
Yep.
and I spent my days at like the kitchen table, I practicing my art, and I was pretty decent, like in grade school and stuff, and I just loved it. I'd make board games. I'd have like the Jim Lee X-Men cards,
Yep.
and then I'd like I'd like kind of like get little holders so that you could stand them up, and they would be like the playing figures. And I'd make games, and this is a huge nerd, you know, just loved this stuff so much. And then as I got older, I got into high school and got distracted by girls. Not that I really had a ton of girlfriends or anything like that, but I it it was comics wasn't my focus for a little bit. I was still going to the store though. I remember like buying and that in that time it was like comics were not cool. It's not like nowadays. Like I remember getting my books in like a brown paper bag from the store and like hoping like nobody would see me as I was like
It's not porn. Jeez, man.
oh well I felt like nervous to share this with other people in school, especially high school, right? So, and then as I got older, still, I just didn't know how to go about like pursuing a career as a creative person, and I felt like a real fear of putting myself out there, fear of rejection, and I just kind of suppressed that, and I like pushed it down, and then actually after I was in my big car accident, and I was like I'm like 35 at that point. I'm just like, am I just gonna live like my whole life in fear of like trying to do something? Like, and I just kind of said, you know what, forget that. I'm gonna go for it. And yeah, ever since then, I've been writing comics like consistently. That was about 3.5 years ago. I spent 6 months on my first script, just really putting the work in and doing revision after revision after revision. I sent it to a local comic book artist in my hometown here. His name's John Delaney. John worked on Adventures in the DC Universe. He did a lot of work for like Bongo, Simpsons, Futurama, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I sent the script to John, and he really liked it. He's like, yeah, man, I get scripts sent to me like all the time, and he's like, I didn't always pass on everything, but he's like, yeah, let's try and work on this together. And he brought me into a startup a comic book app that he was creating. It's called Comic Stream, and it's like all original content for this kind of like motion comics, but with still a reading experience. Like you'd read the word balloons, but things would move, and I'm not sure what's happening with the app right now. It's a huge endeavor trying to get a startup company off the ground. They've made some progress, and they bought that series from me, the publishing rights to it, and they hired Ali Garza to do the art for it.
Okay.
So that was about 2 years ago, and the series actually comes back to me next year, if the app hasn't launched yet. So I'm really excited about that series. It's a lot of fun.
Nice.
I'll give you the pitch here really quick.
Yeah.
It's like Die Hard in a forest fire. It's about a female firefighter. She needs to take down the armed mercenaries and rescue her boyfriend, but she's got a complicated relationship with her man. She's more at home in the flames of. Oh wait, hold on, you screwed up. She's more at home in a burning building than in the flames of romance. It's a fun book. There's lots of humor in it, and action and stuff, and cheesy one-liners. Yeah. So that was my first series, and then from there, I have a cousin that I'm like super super close to. We grew up together, and she would come down for like the whole summer from Edmonton and come and stay with my family. And she's about 2 years older than me, and she loves reading and writing, and she's been a manager of like a bookstore for like 25 years.
Nice.
And I'm like, I'm doing this. I know that you love to write. She would constantly be writing something, and then just she'd start a novel and then not finish it, and then start a new novel and not finish it. I'm like, let's do this thing together. I know you've got great ideas, so we started our monster called Cover of Darkness, and we're on issue 9 of that right now. We had quite a few publishing offers for it in 2019. We're still waiting to land. I think it's going to come out in 2022, which is it's crazy. Like comic books is like hurry up and wait. Like the whole process can be very drawn out when you're trying to get started. But we have 9 issues in the can of the series, and it's been pretty well received, and that's what I sell at conventions right now. Well, when conventions come back,
Yeah.
that's what I'll be selling, and Resilient new. So yeah, I've been creating these different series, and then Resilient was kind of like the one that was kind of a little bit more personal to me, that I just kind of wanted to kind of dial in, and it's my third series that I started writing, but it's my first one to come out in stores.
So, what's difficult about being a writer for your own projects?
Wow, for me, it's funding these books at this point. Like I love it, man. I love making comics, but yeah, I went when I went, after I wrote my Fire Engine Red script, I sat down to draw it myself, and I hadn't drawn anything like 20 years, and it's like I was not good. Like this is like I was pretty solid when I was like 11. I was like top of the class really in art skills, but not anymore. That all fell away big time, and I looked at it and it's just like, yes, I need professional help with this. And so now it's like I've got all these stories that I want to tell, but it's a balancing act. I'm a family man, and I've I can't just like invest money with no plan to recoup it. So um, yeah, that's my most difficult part. I think is just funding the books. I really try and have like really fantastic talent on my books. I think it's really important as a writer. No one's gonna read your book if the art isn't killer. So I think it's essential. So yeah, I have all these stories that I want to tell, and then I guess sitting down to do it, I enjoy it. So it's not really so much a struggle. I love doing it, right? I like to. Here's part of my writing process is I'll go into like my hot tub and kind of have a couple drinks and like relax and really think about it, and then I'll get my phone out and I'll just start typing away, and I try and kind of go float off into like imagination land, and just think about a conversation between two people and what that really sounds like, and there's just kind of bang it away, and really try and get that. That's the hardest part of writing, though. Well, I guess there's the concept stage where you're kind of really trying to lock down the plot and what the concept is. That I find, like, I call it like getting my mojo when I'm talking with my wife. I'm like, oh, I really got my mojo going right now, so I'm like, I'm in the zone, so let me try and like bang this out here. I got some ideas.
Cool.
But then the dialogue, I've kind of got it like a system in place where it's like I can I can get myself in the zone to do it. And then the most tedious part of it for me is panel descriptions, writing what the artist is, what I want the artist to draw. That part I can always kind of turn on though, right? It's like it's not really like, because by the time I've done the dialogue and I've done the plotting and I've done all these things, I've done all the work. So now when it's time to write the panel descriptions, I know it. It's just a matter of writing it in a way that's clear and understandable for the artist to deliver on it.
So what about writer's block then? I mean, you have a hot tub, so I mean, I don't think you should be able to get too much in regards to writer's block.
No, the writer's block that happens for me is more like the fear of failure thing, the fear of it's not being good. So I really like question myself on it, and then I'll just like have the ideas kind of bouncing around in my head for a long, long time before I decide to pull the trigger on it. But once I have it kind of plotted, like I try and do my work that way, where it's like I've got everything kind of sorted out. Like I know what the story is and where it's going. Um, and once I have that, that's the most difficult part for me to write because that's where I question myself the most. And so once I have that down, though, then I can get into dialogue, and I really enjoy writing dialogue. So it's fun for me. Yeah, so I don't really struggle with it too much. I do try, like, another place I like to write is I like to get in the car and I drive to like the beach and just sit and watch the waves come in, and I find that inspiring. I don't know, I have something about water and just and moving. If I can be like if I'm ever in an airplane, I always seem to get like if I have like an hour long flight. I don't know. I always seem to have like a ton of ideas right then. So
You've mentioned a lot of inspirations, and I can see a lot of inspirations behind you. Obviously, what was it about the animated series like X Men and Batman and Spider Man during those decades that is sorely missed on today's youth?
is it missed today? I don't know.
I
Like
think so.
there's like some great animated shows. I have a daughter; she's 8. We watched The Dragon Prince together.
Nice.
I love that show. I think that's great. She's right into Teen Titans Go,
Oh,
and it's a good show. Like it's it's not like my preference for a superhero kind of story. It's a comedy, but it's a very good comedy. And I, I I think there's a lot of great shows on right now. Um, yeah. As far as like the 80s 90s stuff, I just ate it up, man. Like I was like such a nerd. Like I'd have when the X-Men would come on,
yeah.
I would like kind of like assign like roles to like all my friends. So I was Gambit, right? Here.
Yeah.
That was like me. I was like the cool guy, right? And then my other friend was like Wolverine. He's like a little bit of a rage monster, and so we'd all kind of like act it out. Like, we were just huge
Ooh,
nerds.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah, just I really love that stuff, and that really actually helps pull kids into comics. At least it did for me. Like I remember, like, oh man, there's like I knew about comics before that, but just watching the X-Men show and then going to the grocery store and there's X-Men comics there. It's like, please, get these for me.
Kickstarter is always a difficult project to run because it literally is a second job. With the amount of Kickstarters that are out there, how are you trying to separate your comic from those that are currently running?
That's a great question. So to be honest with you, I've done 2 Kickstarters before. I did one for Cover Darkness, one for Fire Engine Red. Just the first issues on those, and it was a grind, dude. I didn't know how hard it was going to be. I really thought like, oh, I'm going to put this out there and make like tens of thousands of dollars, and pay for all my art, and this is going to be great. Like comics are easy. This is a simple business. And then you get on Kickstarter and you realize that like the only people that were looking at my projects at those times were friends and family, and people you went to high school with, and old coworkers, just people that from your Facebook. And I really noticed that it wasn't like enough to just like throw it out on like a post on your Facebook. You actually had to message each person individually, and it's a little embarrassing. You're like, dude, like, remember that time I made that mixtape for you? Like, can you back my comic book, please? Like, I covered your shift that one time. You owe me. And yeah, so it was really tough. But this time with Resilience, it's through Absolute Comics Group. I'm not actually running the Kickstarter. I'm just trying to, promote and bring attention to it. and they have an audience that they've built up through years and years and years. Benny Powell's a writer and an editor that worked in the X-Men offices back in the '90s. He did a lot of the Age of Apocalypse type stuff. So um, he's a writer that has an audience, and then Jamie Tyndall's added so much to the Absolute Comics group, and uh, and then I'm really hoping to differentiate with some of the fantastic artwork that we have. We've got some great covers. Like I said, we have Ed Bennis. We also have Jeffrey the Chamba Cruz. I just like saying his name, the Chamba. He worked for like Street Fighter and Udon and stuff, and
Right.
he gave us like a killer cover too. And I actually roped in a friend of mine. His name is Colin Turnbull. I want to give him a shout out. He works in the oil rigs in northern Alberta. He's a fantastic artist, and he this is his first cover, and he just slayed it. Yeah, he did like a bikini kind of sexy cover with our girl and with her swords, and the publisher liked it so much that they made it like one of the metal covers, one of the highest tiers of
Nice.
the comic book. So I'm really excited for Colin to kind of get his name out there too.
In regards to variant covers, though, not only just for Kickstarters but for a series in general, why do people collect variant covers? Is it just because it's different artists that they like, or is it because that hey, this is something cool and different?
I think there's a lot of reasons for it. Like if you really like a series, you kind of want to get them all, and have like the everything that they've offered. Some people are really passionate about that. We have like 10 covers altogether. I think three retail, six, and then six variants for the Kickstarter, and then one sketch cover. And then so there's the collectability of it, and then there's also like maybe your favorite artist is doing a cover, so you might not even normally pick up this series, but hey, Ed Bennis was awesome. I'm gonna get that book. Like so. I just to have his cover, and I think covers can really do a lot for a series. So just bring attention to it too, because that's one thing too. As like an independent creator, it sure is difficult to secure talent that is really established in the industry and have had long careers that everybody's a fan of. Everybody wants those guys. So they're in a lot of demand. So they have a lot of options, and then also like their page rates are usually pretty uh, out of my price range at the moment for like self-funded indie books. So um, it can be difficult to secure those guys for interiors, but you can bring them in for a cover, and you can start a relationship with them, and see how that develops as your career progresses. Yeah, I hope so. That's the plan, I guess.
Being an independent creator like you are, and as you've mentioned in this interview itself, being that person that's created so many works but maybe doesn't get the visibility that a seasoned professional gets. How are you trying to promote yourself not only as a creator but as a writer as well?
uh, on the convention circuit, mostly like in 2019, that was like my first real year of having books and trying to get them out there. And I did 18 cons that year,
Mm.
just all across the country, New York, Los Angeles, down to New Orleans, up to Calgary, like just all over the place. And it was a grind, man. Like some of the shows were pretty small that I went to, and like in small towns, and that was kind of um, it made it difficult for me because as an independent guy, you're reliant on having foot traffic in front of you. People aren't coming here uh, to see me, right? I'm not Rob Liefeld. People aren't bringing their first appearance of Deadpool to get it signed, right? Like, I'm a guy who, if you're walking by, I can talk to you, but if there's no one to walk by, I can't sell my books. And so when I'm at the shows, I stand the whole time, like all 3 days. I like to talk to people when they come to my table. I like to see them in their eyes, and so I can kind of communicate my passion and my love for comic books to them. And um, on the convention circuit there, I did a stretch there where I did like 4 shows in 4 weeks, and I did a road trip in my minivan because I'm a dad, so I have a
Yeah.
minivan, and um, the shows were just of low attendance, some of them, and it was a struggle, and I was starting to realize like, hey, I'm actually not going to make any money on this trip if if I continue to spend all my money on hotels and eating out. So I'm like, all right, so because I really wanted to come home and like, at least recoup my costs of the trip and maybe try and bank some from that I've already spent on artwork. And so to do that, I was sleeping in my van, showering in truck stops. Uh, I I went on a diet, so it's like, all right, I'll get like 1 foot long sub a day, and I'm just gonna like lean and mean, like for a month here, and yeah, like just to try and save some bucks to make this happen. And it felt like kind of rock and roll. Like honestly, like I kind of felt like badass for doing this. I was like, yeah, I'm making this happen, and it's awesome. But then at the same time, it's also felt really like sad and depressing and kind of like I was homeless and I just didn't have anywhere to go at the end of the day and stuff. So it was a really strange experience. It was one that I was really glad to do though, and kind of pay some dues and like and put in the work to yeah. And that trip did end up being successful. I didn't go in the hole going to those shows. I did come back with a few dollars to help pay for all the artwork that I've secured for my books.
But the experience as well too. I mean, the fact that you're hustling, to give a term for it, you're hustling yourself, your comic, you're in big cities. New York is a tough city, especially the Comic Con itself. Like you're fighting against huge names, not only in the entertainment industry, but in, of course, the people that are behind you as well. And you're doing something right if you've been picked up by a publisher. You're doing something right because you're coming on shows like this and promoting yourself. You're doing everyone a service to saying, hey, I'm here, this is what I can give you. If you like my style, support me. If you don't, well, here's 3 others that I've done. Find something you like.
That's the hope. I'm looking forward to when shows start up because I'll have a few books this time. Because in 2019 I just had my monster book, and I'd be like, this is like my like weirdo kind of pitch for that. People would be walking down the floor. I'd be like, hey, you like monsters? I got you monsters here. And then people would like stop and be like, what is this guy talking about? He's such a weirdo. And I'd be like, do you like monsters? And they'd be like, yeah. And I'm like, well, here, let me show you some cool monsters I got. And I'd have like, monster book with vampires and werewolves. You have a steampunk Atlantean Frankenstein, Viking werewolves. So kind of a new twist on all these different things. It's in like a shared universe, like kind of a Game of Thrones meets Universal Monsters sort of thing. So that sort of world, fantasy and horror combined. And that's not everyone's bag, right? So when I was trying to pitch people these books, they'd be like, yeah, I don't like monsters. All right. Well, so, they'd keep walking and I'd have to, wait till someone liked monsters. Because I like monsters, but not everyone does. And I understand that.
Nice. And every convention has its own field as well. I mean, for me, I've been fortunate to go to Chicago and Toronto and Detroit for my comic conventions because I'm out of Windsor, so I'm literally across the river from Detroit. And so seeing not only anime conventions but Fan Expo and C2E2 and those types of shows, they all have their own field. They have their own industry professionals that they're trying to promote. So the fact that you went from west to east and back type deal, and even into the south, you're seeing everything available.
I went to Vegas, and my salesmanship did not work there at all because like they're so used to like people like trying to like get them to like come look at this timeshare or whatever, like there's so many salesmen in Las Vegas that when I was like doing my shtick, they did not like it at all. And so it was like, all right, I got to kind of dial it back here, And so yeah, there's kind of different tactics for different markets a little bit.
I mean, it's not like you're trying to promote coming into a casino by throwing business cards at them type thing, but
No.
it is what it is. Look, this book isn't about the Hoover Dam, but it's about monsters. You'll like it. Take it. Whatever works. Everyone has one or two people that kind of inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
Well, right now it's probably my wife. With this story. Sometimes I get asked like, well, why do you write about female characters? Well, because they do inspire me. Like my wife is. We've been together for 20 years now. We met when we were just like kids, and yeah, she's great. She's tough and strong, and kind of badass, and take no guff from anybody. And then all the most important people in my life are women. My mother-in-law, Valerie, big part of our life, helps us with I work with adults with developmental disabilities, and she's been a big part of that kind of uh, working with people in our home. And so she would come in and give us a break. And then my mom, and then my cousin Crystal, who I write the monster book, we're super close to. So yeah, those are some of the people that are super inspiring to me, that have helped me along my journey here. So yeah, I got some great women in my life.
From a professional standpoint, you've been doing this for 3 years. You have 4 series under your belt, and your Resilient series has been picked up by a publisher. So, from a professional standpoint, you're successful. But from a personal standpoint, do you consider yourself successful?
That's a super tough question, dude. I keep moving the goalposts for myself. Every time I get some success, the next thing has to be bigger, right? Like, so, it'd be great if I could write a comic. Well, then I wrote a comic, and then it's like, okay, well, then it'd be great if I could, get it made and have some art for it, and then get it printed, and then okay, it'd be great if I could sell a copy, or then okay, now I need to sell X amount of copies at a show, and so I keep on kind of changing the what I deem as successful, and so it's crazy because like just personally like and in one sense I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm like following my passion, and I'm really excited about every morning I wake up and I like excited to like check my email and see if there's like new art in. I like writing my stories and working on my scripts, and I like doing promotion and talking to you and things like that. So I like all those parts of the business, but at the same time it's like I constantly feel like a failure because I constantly change what I want to see happen. And so it's a tough spot there for myself. I need to kind of just celebrate my victories a bit more. The other day was a big one for me, though. I really did try and take it in because, like, I had my first book in Previews magazine ever. That was something I'd wanted like my whole life. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna really try and enjoy this moment and not be like, okay, what's next, and just kind of take it in for me. So that was pretty cool. I went and I bought a copy of the book, and I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I think I'm gonna cut out the page and put it on the wall here somewhere.
That means you're going to have to move some artwork around behind you.
Yeah, maybe.
Sorry, top 10, Stanley, yeah, you stay. Everyone else, yeah, I'm going to shift you around. The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
Um, well, I don't really think I've had like a ton of failure like in comics. I guess when I go to a show and I wouldn't sell a lot of copies of a book, I guess that would be like a failure, and I'd be pretty disappointed in myself. That's one thing. Was like I'd be feeling down about it, and my wife would really kind of pick me up on it and be like, "You're always kind of point out like, oh, look at how far you've come and what you've been able to accomplish. So you shouldn't be so down on yourself." But um, yeah, so not selling at a show would be a failure. So I did work for Comic Stream, the startup company that I was talking about earlier, and as they were downsizing, they let me go, and I was devastated about that because I was like so passionate about it, and met so many cool people there, and I really felt like we were a part of something. I was working as an associate editor there and helping like bring this thing to life, and yeah, it was so much fun. And then and when they cut me loose there, it was a pretty big punch to the gut, 'cause that was like it was almost like it was part of my identity. Like I really felt like, hey, this is like I work for this company and we're making something cool, and this is who I am. And then when that just got kind of taken away, it was like, oh geez, this is really hard for me to kind of swallow. So those are some of the failures, and I guess just my family kind of they're just cheering me on. Like they've been like super supportive and nice, and I remember in 2018 I called my wife from my work and I was like, I gotta quit. I'm like, I gotta go for this. And she's like, whoa, are you sure? And I'm like, I gotta go for it. And she's like, well, how about you take a leave of absence and see how it goes? And so I took a 6 month leave of absence and I never went back. I got my job at Stream there. And so it's like I just never went back to working outside of the house and in group homes and day programs, working with adults with developmental disabilities outside of my house. I never went back to it. I've been lucky enough to continue working and writing, making comic books, and it's a big part of it is from my family kind of believing in me and having faith in me to be able to put this thing together. And it's a hard business to try and crack into and make it happen for yourself. and the margins are so small. But I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm making some progress.
The younger generation is looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to become writers or artists or creative in their own right. And of course, being a dad as well, you have a younger generation that's currently with you, and I'm sure you're inspiring them in many ways. How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
Um, I guess by doing it, like I think that's one thing that's great about kind of the younger generation is there's a lot less of the hang-ups, like I said, I was buying my comics in a brown paper bag because I was embarrassed by my passion when I was in high school, and it actually took like courage, I felt like, to go into the store because I felt like people were just so savage and mean. Like, high school was brutal, and I don't get the sense of that nowadays. I really think that people are really encouraged to kind of pursue their interests. And yeah, so I think as a society, I think we're kind of leaning more into that. The reality is, though, is that it's really tough, to if you want to be a creative person and make a little bit of money at it. It's really, really hard. And so there is that kind of balance of having a passion and wanting to do it, um, and then to actually go ahead and make it viable. I kind of look at making comics, like you getting back to that imposter syndrome thing. Um, I kind of feel like making comic books can be kind of like doing a home renovation. And, people often talk about talent and things like this, but I think a big part of talent is having an objective eye and being able to evaluate your work critically, so that, and your collaborators' work too, right? And so that, like, for example, if it's a home renovation, I might not be a tile setter, and I might not know anything about like really how to do it, but I can kind of teach myself how to do it. And if I put in the work and the time and the patience, and if I mess up, I got to take it down and fix it and just keep going at it and working at it until it's good. I would feel confident that I could make a professional looking backsplash in the kitchen. I think I could do it. So it's I kind of equate comics the same way. Like if you're willing to put in the work, and then like I'll read my scripts out loud to my wife. Like she's a very patient woman. she's like I'll read them out loud, and it's like, I want to hear how this dialogue sounds. Do you mind reading the woman's part? I will read the man's part. And just and just so I can hear it. So um being critical of your own work, and it would be, I think, how the next generation can crack in, because I do think there's just more people. I think there's more and more people doing it now. So it's not a matter of them inspiring. That people are already inspired to kind of chase after their dreams. It's not That's not the question of how are they going to be inspired. It's how are they going to make it happen. And I think that you know self-evaluation is essential.
That being said, I hate to say it, but we're wrapping up the interview. It's a shame because you're a wealth of knowledge. You're a fun guy to talk to, and I can't wait to have you on the show in the future as well. But before I let you go, how can we find, of course, yourself and your work on social media? And of course, we haven't even talked about your own show on YouTube.
Yeah, so social media, the big one for me is Instagram. I share a lot of art that from like what my artists are working on my page there. So it's at Comic Book George, and then um, my YouTube channel is called Inside Comics, and it's kind of more of like a show about how to make comics. I still feel like I'm figuring it out, and so I talk with everyone from like industry veterans that have like a wealth of experience to newcomers making their first book, and sometimes they have like a really neat take on things too. So if you're interested in making comics, especially, I think Inside Comics is kind of a cool show. So you can check that out on YouTube, and then I have a website too, georgemichail.com. If you check out some of my other properties and read about them on there.
Well, like I said, George, that ends this particular interview on Two Geeks Talking. I do want to thank you for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to have you. And like I said, I do want to have you on the show as well in the future with whatever you decide to create and promote.
Thanks so much for having me, Kurt. This has been really nice.
Awesome. Well, as I said, that ends this particular interview. You can, of course, find this interview on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/TGT Media. You can, of course, find thousands of interviews I've done over the past 12 years on tgtmedia.com or twogeekstalking.com as well. Social media wise, at Kurt Sasso, KURTSASSO, for Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, a variety of other things as well too. But make sure you take the time to like and subscribe this interview as well as the 1,000 others as well on our YouTube channel. Every little bit helps. And of course, you're showing love for George as well too. That's the main thing. As I've said before in the past, everyone has a story to tell, and it's up to me to help bring that out. Tune in next week for another great interview on Two Geeks Talking. Hey all, Kurt Sasso here from Two Geeks Talking. If you like this video and these quick clips here, make sure you take a look at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe as well. Hit the bell to make sure you get notifications, of course, from videos like this here. Thank you everyone for listening and watching over the years, and keep listening and watching for new and exciting interviews with talented and creative people in the entertainment industry. I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. Thank you so much.